Hello everyone, and thank you for attending today's webinar From Concept to Market, Overcoming the Challenges of Manufacturing and Clinical Trials, presented by Altasciences. I'm Ingrid Holmes, Vice President of Global ClinOps here at Altasciences, and I'll be moderating this webinar. Our speakers today are Ben Reed, Vice President Manufacturing, Dennis DiBiagio, Vice President of BD at our Harleysville, Pennsylvania CDMO site, and Kevin Kirkcaldy and Todd Jansen, who are the pharmacy leads at our Montreal and Kansas City clinical locations. Just a few technical notes before we begin. The webinar is being streamed through your computer, so there's no dial-in number. For the best audio quality, please make sure to turn your volume up. We're recording today's event, and you'll be able to access it on demand within 24 hours. Time permitting, we'll follow the presentation with a Q&A session, so please submit your questions using the Q&A tab on the left side of your screen. So for our agenda today, we're going to talk briefly about Altasciences' evolution and the services that we offer, and those that we've added over the last several years. And then we're going to get into the heart of the webinar, the topic here, which is our pharmacy on-demand services, and individually our pharmacy GCP services and our GMP manufacturing services. Both teams are going to discuss individual case studies, which I really believe are going to show well how the teams can handle complex situations and complex drug product manipulation within their facilities and their own procedures, but I think more importantly, how we can share those activities across our organization and really provide creative solutions for our clients who often are up against some pretty important challenges. So a little bit about Altasciences. We're a mid-sized full-service CRO. We've been around for over 25 years. And where we spend most of our time at our business is in early stage development. We can take you from lead candidate all the way through proof of concept. And now with our Pennsylvania CDMO team in place, we can also take you beyond that with our manufacturing expertise in that area. Our leadership team is set up a little unconventionally, not traditionally the CRO setup that you'd normally see. We've deliberately done that to ensure that all of our lines of businesses are reporting into two executives who work extremely closely together, of course. And that ensures that all of our different services are very well knitted together in terms of how we provide the services, but also how we communicate the client's needs across those lines of services. It allows us to integrate new procedures, new lines of business even, into the business exceptionally quickly. And I think you're going to see a little bit more about how that's working very well today during the presentation. We're located in North America. All of our physical sites are in the US and Canada. And today we're going to talk about three facilities in particular. Our two clinics, one which is in Kansas City and has just over 140 beds, and our facility in Montreal, Canada, which has over 265 beds, all of which are dedicated to early phase clinical research, and of course, both of which have pharmacy operations embedded within the facilities. And then, of course, Pennsylvania, our new addition, our CDMO site, will be discussing their facility and their capabilities a little later on during the presentation. We're just over 1,000 employees now, and you'll see on the next slide, we were founded in 1992. So really, all of our employees here have been either within pharma, biotech, or academia, and a majority have also been within competing CROs over the years. A lot of experience with our team here at Altasciences. So just a quick overview of Altasciences history. As I mentioned on the last slide, Altasciences was founded in 1992 and has had a pretty large evolution, I'd say, over the last 6 or 7 years. Really since 2010, when Chris Perkin was appointed as our CEO, we really did put together a significant growth plan for Altasciences. And what you can see from 2013 onward is that there have been a number of acquisitions that have allowed us to add significantly to Altasciences' offering and the services that we can share with our sponsors. Our clinic in Kansas City was added in 2013. They historically had been in operation for over 10 years. We acquired a large preclinical safety testing facility in Everett, Washington, 2 years ago. And then earlier this year, we acquired our CDMO site in Harleysville, Pennsylvania. And I think on this side, you'll really see just a very good depiction of the services we offer and how they overlap. And you can see how we've purposely thought through how these services also need to be intertwined and communicating with each other in order to deliver the best service to our clients. So we really do start at discovery. We have full bioanalytical testing capabilities from non-GLP all the way through to GLP, and that brings us into actually covering all areas of development out into post-marketing studies. But the majority of our work does happen in early phase. So we see preclinical, from lead candidate selection all the way through supporting your program into phase 3. And then the clinical work we do, as I mentioned, for the most part is going to start at phase 1, and we will end generally at phase 2A proof of concept studies. We also provide the full range of NDA enabling studies and post-marketing requirements for our sponsors. In terms of research services, we support all of those operational activities with a very strong team of project managers, PK scientists, biostats, data management, and medical writing teams that can really help you all the way from writing your initial documents and reports all the way to filing for market authorization. And then I'm really excited to talk about this, and this is, why we're here today, our manufacturing and analytical services, which we added earlier this year. They can take you all the way from your concept, walk you through exactly what would be required to get you up and going from a drug perspective, and then they can also carry you through into commercialization. So this is why we're here, and these are the services Altasciences currently offers. So to lead into the individual presentations, just like to summarize very briefly here, how excited I am, first of all, to be able to introduce these teams to you, and also to really talk through our pharmacy on demand capabilities, which really have been exceptionally well rounded out by the addition of our CDMO site. If you go back and you think about the types of studies we run at Altasciences in our clinics, we are known for conducting complex trials. And that's really meant that we've had to, tailor build our facilities and bring in the right staff, of course, to support those activities. And a big part of that has been expanding our pharmacy capabilities and making sure that our staff have all of the right procedures and personnel in place to carry out pretty complex compounding and processing of drug that needs to be dispensed for our trials. But there's always been quite a limitation there. That is really when that compounding requires something that really delves into an area that we don't have, which is full GMP at our facilities. We, of course, do have all of our procedures based on GMP principles. We cover regulations spanning North America and Europe and even into South America and in Anvisa. However, we aren't a GMP facility. And now with the addition of our team in Pennsylvania, we're able to provide those services that can carry us through a complex preparation for clinical trials as well. So really, we look at this as an on-demand adaptive service. We should be able to provide any service you need, any process you need in terms of getting drug into the clinic as quickly as possible. So really, our 3 pillars, as we like to call them. One is speed. We want to accelerate the time from your manufacturer to clinic. We want to make sure we can handle your batch size. That's always a challenge with certain CDMOs where they really don't like working with smaller batch sizes. We want to be able to work with you all the way from your initial concept through preclinical and then because of what we've learned there, developing into what's going to be needed when you get into humans. We also need to talk to you early on about your objectives and where you want to be at the end of your program, or where you think you might want to be at the end of your program, so that we can start predicting some of those complex changes that may need to be made along the way. And of course, we want to be able to pivot quickly. So if you need to change a route of administration or change something and adapt it along your program, we want to be there. And then once you get into early phase, this is where we really want to be looking at the study itself, the requirements of how we're going to handle the compounding, the dispensing, and also if there's going to be need to be potentially some adaptations done during the study. We, of course, can handle a lot of that on site within our pharmacy, but when we can't and when we need full GMP on something, or when we need a manufacturing step to change within that trial, such as an adaptation of your doses, let's say during a first in human trial, this is where we would bring in our colleagues in Pennsylvania and say, okay, rather than this actually taking place in our pharmacy at the location where the clinic is happening, let's talk about getting our CDMO site involved. They can handle the manufacture of the drug, get it to us quickly, and ensure that we don't slow down. That really is our goal here, to make sure that we're providing not only the best service, but it's actually keeping the development of your study and program moving forward as quickly as possible. So you can actually see that once we're into that production step or the clinical trial phase, you actually have complementary services within the GMP and the GCP sites. They both provide very similar services, and that can span from getting the drug product ready all the way to blinding and changes in doses, let's say, during an escalation process. But in one case, you're talking about a GCP process that's based on GMPs, and in the other, it is a full GMP supported and licensed process. And then once we get past the clinic, now we've got experience. Now we know with our CDMO folks what you're going to need to get you into those next stages. How can we help you get into a final product selection, a final route of administration, let's say, and potentially bring you into commercialization? So what we've learned, even if we handled the initial trials in a non-GMP fashion, what we've learned in the pharmacy can be very, very important information to bring over to the CDMO. So with that, I'd like to pass you over to Kevin and Todd. They're going to talk to you a little bit more about our pharmacy operations within our clinics.
So thank you, Ingrid, for that great introduction. So now we're going to pass to the pharmacy operations portion of our presentation. So our integrated pharmacy services include highly trained pharmacists and pharmacy technicians that have decades and cumulative experience in clinical trial preparations, dispensing, compounding, and aseptic techniques. We're equipped to do pretty much any and all types of IP administration forms, from your basic solid oral dose to IV preparations in sterile prep, passing through pretty much anything, topical, ocular, even electronic vaping studies. So if you can think of a route of administration, we've probably done it multiple times. Our procedures comply with the good manufacturing practices of ICH, EU guidelines for sterile prep and IP management, Health Canada guidelines, US Pharmacopoeia. Our sites are also equipped with the negative pressure, HEPA filtered ISO class 7 clean rooms, ISO class 5 biological safety cabinets. We are also licensed for controlled substances, precursors, and cannabis studies. North of the border, up here in Canada, we regularly meet our clients' needs concerning all sorts of Health Canada requirements like import and export licenses. If it's inside of Canada that the controlled drugs are transferred, we can initiate cubic to cubic transactions of these controlled substances. We can also proceed with the medicinal and recreational cannabis product studies, and that's under our cannabis drug and research licenses. Without forgetting that we can also conduct studies with precursor drugs like pseudoephedrine. Todd, I don't know if you want to add a little something about the US side of things.
Yeah, thanks, Kevin. So at the Kansas side, Oakland Park, Kansas, our site is physician research model, clinical research. So basically that just means the physicians have their DEA license, and all controlled substance procurement is done through that license. So we do have a physician on site that is that has a Schedule I license. So that just means that the pharmacy is equipped to handle any Schedule I substances. Our two physicians do have Schedule II through V controlled substance licenses, but like I said, the one physician is allowed to procure for us the Schedule I products. That was a process that involved a rigorous DEA inspection with our local DEA office agents coming in and ensuring and making sure that we were able to handle a Schedule I license. So as Kevin said, that is something that we do at the Kansas site. A little bit different management of controlled substances as our north of the border site is, but here in Kansas we are able to handle the Schedule I through V products.
Yeah, and if I can add, the important thing is that with both of our sites, different ways of working, we can really provide anything that the sponsors need. And if one site is not in a position to help, the other site can often come in and save the day. So we really have two good teams that can help us find solutions that our clients need to really be able to do and complete their studies.
So as Kevin spoke about the two sites being able to handle complex processes and procedures that are called that are needed within a protocol, the Kansas site pharmacy is located within a building created and specifically for that. In May of 2016, we moved into a new building that has a pharmacy designed for that. So as he spoke, we are able to handle about any type of process or procedure that a protocol calls for. So with that, my main focus is just ensuring that both sites work together. So it's a team concept. Both sites have a team in place to receive RFPs, those requests for proposals. That goes to a specific team that's then handed off to another team for protocol writing, synopsis writing, that sort of thing. Whatever the sponsor is needing at that time, we do have teams within our sites that allow us to progress to the next stage of developing that protocol and rolling it out in a clinical study. As Kevin mentioned, we do have shipments that go back and forth between sites. We have in place those import-export permits. Canada has the brokers in place as well as the distributors. On the Kansas side, it's a little bit different regulations, but we do have distributors in place to be able to import, export both non-controlled and controlled substances to the site if needed. At the Kansas site, we deal more with the FDA labeling requirements that are necessary for a clinical trial. The Montreal site, Kevin and his team are well versed in Health Canada as well as US or FDA labeling requirements, since they do both clinical trials from the European side as well as the US side. Part of our team process or departments do have that intense medical protocol review, multiple teams, multiple eyes on these protocols before they even get to an IRB for authorization to proceed in a clinical trial. So within our teams at both sites, there are departments that do handle protocol review that help that sponsor get that protocol approved, get it to the IRB to progress the clinical trial moving towards the site conduct. Both sites have that capability to produce pharmacy manuals. These manuals are done within the teams at the various sites. Multiple revisions are done back and forth with the sponsor to end the finalized pharmacy manual that is protocol driven. The nice thing about both sites is the harmonization. So those SOPs are harmonized to allow Kevin's team and my team to work together to problem solve. We've had multiple interactions within the last 2 to 3 months that have allowed this to happen, basically because our processes are so similar that it's a quick phone call to the other side to be able to problem solve and get that solution to that issue that we're having, whether it be an import of a product, whether it be a process of a vaping study or a smoking study, a complex process of handling a nasal insufflation. We're able to meet the solutions that are needed for that particular problem that we're having.
We don't have necessarily the same profiles of studies. They do a lot in Kansas, if I'm not mistaken, really FDA studies. Up here in Montreal, we do FDA studies also, but we do a lot of EMA studies, TPD and ANVISA ones that don't have necessarily the same rules for retention samples and labeling and things like that. So our team too up here has really the expertise to help the sponsors get their protocols pushed through and approved. So both sites together really are able to have a rounded out offer to help the clients get their different studies ready for different countries.
And finally, with our rigorous QA and QC departments, we're easily able to handle inspections from various regulatory audits, whether that be the FDA, HC, EMA, MHRA. Our teams are ready to receive those inspectors upon site and be able to successfully carry out that audit. So Kevin and I'd like to close with a couple case studies. I'll let Kevin begin with his case study, just showing the complexity of our studies and the way we work together to have a successful clinical trial.
Okay, so thanks, Todd. So for our first case study that we're going to talk about today, it's a study that the sponsor came to us, to our Montreal site with a novel AP that didn't really have a mature oral formulation yet. This was a phase 1 first in human study. To get you a bit more into what type of study it was, it's a double-blinded placebo-controlled trial with adaptive SAD, MAD, so single and multiple ascending dose cohorts, and it also included sentinels. So kind of a complex protocol. So in this case, we really had to work closely with the sponsor. He came to our facilities. We had to try and develop a vehicle that we could use to be able to prepare the suspension of the IP that we could then use for dosing. So our pharmacy team really helped to develop the compounding procedures that were then used at dispensing. We had to do multiple mock preparations at many different dose levels that were used for analysis to measure the concentrations of the IP to make sure that they stayed in acceptable range. Also determine if there was any microbiological activity in the preparations. Since this was a double-blinded study with the placebo, we also needed a formulation that not only looked like the test formulation, like we regularly do, but we also had to have something that had a similar taste, texture, and also precipitated in pretty much the same way. So at first, what the sponsor proposed to us was to simply buy a commercial product that was something that was used for a completely other indication. And it really didn't mimic at all the characteristics that we're looking for with our IP suspension. So we had to do a lot of different tests internally. And we're finally able to find an inert comestible substance that was a pretty close visual match with our IP in suspension, and it actually acted pretty much as the IP did when it precipitated. It precipitated a little bit faster, but if we kept it shaken before administration, it looked pretty much identical. We also had that dispensed in amber syringes to further maintain the blind. We also had a problem because the taste of the IP was a bit bitter. So you could tell the difference between the placebo's taste, which tasted nothing, and the IP. So we had to add also flavoring to this formulation. And it ended up being pretty much the same thing. So after all these tests were completed, our pharmacist here on site prepared the pharmacy manual that described all of our procedures that were linked to the formulation, to the preparation, and to stability. Once this manual was completed, it was actually requested by the Canadian regulatory authorities and it played a role in the study's approval, which is actually really rare because they never asked for the pharmacy manual. But this happened in this case because it wasn't a mature developed product. So after the regulatory authorities got back to us, the different dose levels that were proposed, they were changed. But luckily, our compounding procedure was very adaptable and flexible. So we're able to really adapt quickly, and it didn't cause any delays in the study. So my team here at Altasciences, we're really proud that all our hard work helped to get the study approved and that got all the patients dosed rapidly. So Todd?
Thank you, Kevin. So I'd like to just focus in on, as I conclude, just how our sites work together. Several years ago, we had a human abuse study that involved a European client reached out to us and wondered if we could handle a nasal insufflation for one of their products. And at the time, the Montreal site had not performed as many clinical studies regarding human abuse studies. They reached out to our medical director here at the site at the time, and we were able to converse with them and be involved from the very beginning. The site was run on our Montreal site, but with the input of myself and another pharmacist, we were involved from the beginning of the study, including the SIV as well as the training. So the European client, this particular study required a manipulation for nasal insufflation. It was a very complex, intense preparation that involved manual manipulation of tablets. One dose, if I can go back to that period of time, I believe took almost up to an hour to prepare. So there was a lot of manipulation, a lot of precise process involved with that, ensuring that the correct amount of product was available for nasal insufflation. So because of that, because of the complexity of the method of that manipulation, we had to have trained pharmacists of both sites to be able to have that flexibility of staff coverage. So I was able to be involved in that. I was traveled up there, was involved in the SIV, was involved in the training. That training was intense enough that the sponsor was on site to make sure that we did have the correct amount of sample prepared to meet the specifications that were needed for that method to be complete for a subject dosing. So just to end and kind of tie things up, as I mentioned at the very beginning of our discussion, we are two sites separated by mileage only by two different countries. We have commonality in our SOPs, commonality in our processes, commonalities in our procedures that allow us to bring forth a uniform front to sponsors that come to us. As Kevin mentioned, and we've mentioned, both of us mentioned before, if a sponsor comes to us and they need a particular agent to go across the border, or it needs to be, they need the Montreal input for Kansas delivery of the clinical trial, that's fine. We're one company, but we work together as a team to be able to produce a clinical trial with clean data, with integrity, and with a product that we can be proud of. So at this time, I'd like to turn the discussion over to our CDMO team, Ben and Dennis.
All right. Thank you, Kevin and Todd. This is Ben and Dennis from the Philadelphia site here. We're going to take a few minutes to discuss our manufacturing and analytical operations. So here, just northeast of Philadelphia, we have a 30,000 square foot facility. In this facility, what we really like to say we do is simplify contract services for our clients. We do that by proof of concept, R&D, clinical and commercial manufacturing. We have a lot of different dosage capabilities that we'll focus on in the next few slides. An overview of our facility, it's about 9,500 square feet of warehouse, 3,300 square feet of a GMP manufacturing area. We have a second GMP manufacturing area that's an ISO 7, ISO 8. It's about 2,500 square feet. That area is capable of handling potent compounds also. We have a formulations lab, and then we finish off with an analytical laboratory. We've had a lot of experience in this space, Dennis, and I would say comfortably we've manufactured or tested almost every available pharmaceutical dosage form.
Right, Ben. the facility definitely lends itself very well to clients, both new clients and existing clients, to come to us for multiple types of projects. The key to every project is to have a good quotation in place that sort of captures the client's request for proposal, if they have that, or if they don't have a request for proposal, we'll work with them to develop what the objectives are for that particular project. The quotations are all laid out in a manner to sort of flow from materials coming in, methods, analytical methods that need to be developed, transferred, and then also the manufacturing part that would lay out if there's engineering batches, feasibility work, and then ultimately the clinical supply batches, followed by quality assurance, which is also a critical part to sort of oversee both those functions.
Yeah, that's a great point. We really do plan for success. It really is a roadmap for our clients when we present that original quote to them, and it really walks them through all areas of their project.
Yeah, and a lot of times we spend a fair amount of time to get a quotation in place for that purpose, just to have a good plan going into the kickoff meeting, and that's ultimately once you get a quote signed, then you have a kickoff meeting to review the whole project, get a timeline involved, and start working from that. And also one other important function is to build flexibility into that quotation that allows for the plan to change, but not be a showstopper for the project.
That's true. That's a good point. So some of the key product optimization capabilities that we've put here at Altasciences Philadelphia. The first one that we like to talk about is a liquid-filled capsule. In this, it's the two-piece gelatin or HPMC capsule that we can do a semi-solid, hot melt, or liquid fill. Some of the real optimization parts of this and how we can plan for success with our clients is this gets us up into the first-in-human capability very quickly. Minimal development requirements are needed for this. You can simply melt down some high molecular pegs and suspend your API in there to get into the first-in-human trials. There are also some very interesting, unique excipients that we can use to improve solubility. We can target those excipients for the oral solid dose. And finally, it presents itself with abuse deterrent potential with obviously some other targeted excipients.
Right, and just like the liquid fill capsules, nanomilling is another niche type of a process that we have really perfected here at Alta. And not only is it a niche process, but it's also a process that lends itself for some of the bioavailability issues that you see with many of the APIs now, that would give the clients another option for getting their drug into a dosage form that will get them into a clinic quickly. And the nanomilling certainly does present that. It is a very unique process. You can mill your API down to what?
Down 20 nanometers below.
And it is, we do have ways of doing it in the formulations lab to give us a proof of concept that would mimic going on to the more complex equipment that often you need. And this also works in the high potent area, right?
Yeah, and that's a great point. I think our case study that we'll discuss at the end will kind of highlight how we're able to utilize that at Altasciences here.
And then a lot of times the clients use that process to help them as they're thinking through long-term, if there's any patents that would be necessary or applied to the product as they move down the clinical path.
So another niche area that we like to optimize our capabilities for our clients would be potent handling. So we've set up a room and we've set up systems here to control airflows for the facility, and then systems to protect the employees also, so that we're able to handle high potent manufacturing. We have various size isolators. We also design processes around closed systems if the process leads that way. And what we do is we like to look at it as a case-by-case study for each of our clients to see the optimal way of handling their API. So this room also doubles as our grade C manufacturing room. Grade C is a higher classification of room for those products that need that sort of material handling. In this room, we do a lot of terminally sterilized products for our clients. A lot of those RIVs. This type of manufacturing is actually preferred by the FDA. If your API can withstand sterilization, it kind of guarantees that product is going to be suitable for injections. It also is a client preferred way of manufacturing because the cost to create a product in a grade C room that's terminally sterilized afterward is less than half, most likely, of the cost if you have to go straight aseptic processing.
So, once we get the project signed and we start moving forward, there are some critical paths that we follow, such as getting a Gantt chart. And this is done with the client's input, of course, and it's a starting point that we know will change as we go along, but it does give everybody transparency as far as how the project's going. This evolves into having weekly, bi-weekly meetings, certainly initially to capture all the critical steps that are needed to get the project started. We do try to get the job started as quickly as possible upon approval of the quotation, and then carry that through the Gantt chart through the course of the project. API is typically one of the key points that you have to keep your finger on as far as deliverables. It's always one of the main contributing factors for delay of projects, that from a method standpoint or from a manufacturing standpoint. Once we get that Gantt chart in place, it sort of helps the whole program. It might be 4 weeks, could be 2 months, whatever it might be, and we keep up to date on that as the project proceeds.
Certainly, and the next step then in the Gantt chart that we take a close look at would be the method transfer, qualification, and potentially validation of methods in our analytical lab for our clients. And the thing that we like to keep keen on this is, first we check out the compatibility of the equipment. If the methods are qualified somewhere else, we want to make sure we have like-for-like equipment if we're going to transfer them in. If we don't, it's not an issue. It just means that instead of a transfer, it may be a qualification. We also like to take a look at the robustness of work that's done prior to Altasciences. Obviously, the more robust, the easier the method, the higher chance of success we will have at our first shot here at Altasciences, and then therefore being able to keep up with the timeline for our client. And then finally, as we get into the nitty-gritty of it, and as projects progress, methods need to go from qualification to validation. So that's the possibility of further developments. A lot of times methods may be suitable for qualification, suitable for first in human, phase 1, phase 2. And then as the product progresses to phase 3 and commercial, you look at making the method a little bit more robust, and then finally validating the method.
And as you move into the manufacturing area, the whole robustness sort of centers around your capabilities from an equipment standpoint. You like to have all the equipment here when the project starts, but we do make a point of identifying equipment. If we need to get equipment, we will certainly go out and get it as part of the quote. It would be built into that, and it would allow us to scale up from a small batch that's for phase 1, phase 2, all the way up through commercial. We do have a lot of equipment here at Alta that allows us to do that, from the liquid fill capsules, powder blending,
all the different sizes of nanomills that we have.
Yeah. So that's a big part too, that it allows you to keep the process going with the equipment. The timeline from the manufacturing standpoint is again very important to get into the schedule. We don't like having projects that are way far out as far as the time to go to manufacturing, but it is a realistic timeline that we like to present to the clients and work with them, so it meets the bottom line is you want to meet their target date for delivery to the clinic.
That's exactly right. So we decided to highlight one of the case studies that we've had here. Dennis, this is 2017?
2017, yeah.
Okay. And honestly, it's probably one of our favorite clients that we've ever had through the door here at Alta. So he came to us, he came to you the first week of August, was it?
First week of August, yeah. It was sort of a call out of the blue.
Right.
And he needed what do you say? He needed something that was impossible to do. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So first week of August, he came to us with an API, no formulation work. He knew that he needed to nanosize it. And then the second thing, and the only other thing I think that he knew, is that he needed it in the clinic the first week of October.
Right, and that was August. That was August. Yeah.
First week of August to first week of October. So essentially 8 weeks. And if you think about all the activities that have to be performed in these 8 weeks, it's a pretty daunting task. So to lay it out, and Dennis, correct me if I'm wrong, your first steps is come up with different formulations.
Right.
To stress the molecule, stress the formulation. So I believe we came up with 5 formulations in our formulations lab. Mm-hmm. And we were able to use what Dennis mentioned earlier is the formulation size equipment for nanomilling. We came up with these 5, and then we put them all in accelerated stability. During the same time, the lab then got their initial samples, so they could start working on method work for assay, for impurities. So 2 weeks out, I think we pulled samples. We looked at all 5 different products. I think we chose 3 to continue 2 more weeks, and then we chose the lead candidate. So in the background, being able to actually go from 5 to 3, it lightened up the load for the lab. And then when they were able to finally choose the final formulation, now they're able to write their protocols and perform the method qualification work that's needed for GMP supply.
Yeah, and if you recall, I mean, that initial study was really important, but the client also wanted us to be able to produce this down the road for future studies once they sort of honed in on the right dose that they were working with, the potency of it. So we were able to sort of foresee that and provide sort of a streamlined approach that worked out. It was almost a home run.
That's a really good point, because he wasn't just interested in first the human trials. He was also interested in proof of concept.
Yeah.
So really getting that robust formulation. So in the meantime, the analytical group is working on all the methods. The manufacturing group now is outsourcing the proper equipment that may or may not be needed in manufacturing.
Right.
And I think we needed 1 or 2 pieces of equipment, nothing major, but we were able to bring them in-house quickly in August. We performed all the design, installation, operational, and performance qualifications of the equipment in-house.
Right.
And we were ready to be up and running the beginning of September.
And we did the labeling through that as well, correct?
That's correct.
We did labeling on that as well. And so we were able to take it from, right through to the clinic and ship it to the sites. There was a handful of sites that we shipped to across the country, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
And it was also a temperature controlled situation. I'm not, sorry.
The bulk was.
The bulk was.
Yeah. So this product had a lot of interesting things.
Yeah, it wasn't a slam dunk, and it came together. But the client he knew what he wanted. He had a lot of input. He helped with sort of approving things quickly, allowing us not to be stalled in any of these steps from analytical to manufacturing. So
yeah, so I think we manufactured the GMP batches maybe second week of September. And the lab was able to perform all the analytical GMP testing of it. QA was able to release it. So we hit his timeline. I would say it was a slam dunk from that perspective. He was extremely happy.
yeah,
But it definitely was a challenging task that he brought us. One that I would say we don't really want to do again if we don't have to.
right.
But if our client needs it, we're more than happy to do it for them.
Yeah, and the other thing that was good too, the client, I guess he had worked other places where he couldn't necessarily be on site or necessarily in the rooms while the process was going on, but we were able to allow him to be here. He sort of respected the process, the number of operators and rooms and so on, but he was on site for all this. It was a very high profile project for them, of course, and he became very involved with it. So
yeah, and continued success of this product is his first human trials went very well. So it was able to progress in the next 3 months and then the next 6 months to make all the way up to phase 2 clinicals supplies for him. And I think we were able to source multiple different pieces of equipment to be able to keep at his scale that he required.
yeah, so good story.
Yeah, that was a fun story for us back in 2017, and we still work with that client today. With that client, and then actually that individual who's moved to different companies, but he returns to Altasciences.
Yeah.
So you might be asking yourself, why choose Altasciences? Well, first of all, our clinical pharmacy and manufacturing teams, we have a full offer of services that are needed really to get your molecule from concept to market, and we can do this quickly and effectively. Being one company, all of our scientific knowledge and expertise can really flow easily from one team to another. So by working as one unit, we can really help streamline all the different steps that you can think of, either from manufacturing to the preclinical part and all of the phase 1 to 3 of the clinical trials. We can even help you with the commercial dose formulation development. We have adaptive GMP manufacturing for early development. We also have a real-time dose reformulation and a batch validation for compounding and manufacturing. Having access to all specialized resources under one big umbrella in the Altasciences family can really accelerate your timelines. And we all know that in drug development, time is of the essence, and lots of money can be lost if there's too many delays. Our on-demand manufacturing and clinical pharmacy services make this process as easy and seamless as possible to really help you achieve your goals.
I'd just like to take a few minutes here to talk about a case study that recently occurred with our Kansas site and our CDMO team in Philly. Had a sponsor give us a call for current studies. They're working with us for a potential dose that currently is not in the protocol, but a potential for a dose that may be needed to reach that maximum therapeutic dose. They reached out to us. This product is a formulation of the capsule, and just because of our bandwidth here at our pharmacy, we weren't able to provide such a large amount of capsules to be formed under a GMP condition. So we reached out, within a 24-hour period, reached out to the Philly team. We worked together. We got a call set up with the sponsor, provided our platform with what is needed. And we're currently, this is under discussion, but what I just want to reiterate here is the idea that we're working together as a company. We're presenting a uniform front to the sponsor. So within a matter of 24 hours, we reached out to the sponsor. We had a process to present to the team that just because due to the amount of capsules needed, the CDMO team was able to get a plan together. This is currently under talk, so this is a case study that's actually in the works. It's live. We're still in talks with the sponsor, but it is nice that we're able to quickly reach out to one another, be able to help one another and problem solve and get a solution, a workable solution to the sponsor. So the clinical trial can be successful and not have any delays for those milestones that are needed to get their product onto market and onto the next phase of development.
Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll now take some questions from our viewers. Please enter your questions using the Q&A tab on the left side of your screen. Our first question is, how do you handle dose changes or potential formulations within a trial?
Three main points that we need to focus on. That the first one, beginning with communication. We have to have good communication with the sponsor, good communication with our CDMO group, and that's the nice thing. It's a simple email or phone conversation with our CDMO team in Philly. We get a plan ready to go. We present that to the client, and we move forward to the next step. Once that communication has been established and we've got a plan, we've got to develop that batch method, the batch method of development. So that has to be initiated, originated, and once that is complete, that of course has to go for sponsor approval, IRB approval, all of the other regulatory agencies that are involved. And then lastly, just as important as the first two, those samples, whether it be a oral suspension, sterile product, solid oral dosage form, those samples we send for analysis. So whether it be to an outside vendor or back to the sponsor, those samples need to be analyzed just to make sure that if it's a sterile product, that it's remained sterile. We need to check milligram, the concentration, strength, other areas of analysis that need to be performed prior to going into the dosing formulation and making sure that it's all within the limits of the required batch method that was developed. Then, Dennis, I'll let you take it from here and let you speak about your side for this question that you presented.
Okay, yeah, thanks. On this side with in the GMP suites, we typically work to get a cleaning method in place. That sort of allows us a lot of flexibility to work on a real-time basis with any changes. We do try to build in the flexibility of multiple doses if we can do that right up front, so that we do have maybe at our disposal some formulations that have already been prepared in anticipation of any changes, knowing what the max and min doses may be prior to the start of the study. And once we get the doses made, our quality group would be in a position to release them in a timely fashion to get them to the clinic.
Okay, thank you. When should you engage the Altasciences team for early planning and engagement?
I can take that one. The earlier we can be brought into the program, the better. to be able to anticipate the needs of the clients always gives us the advantage to work with the clinical folks on the front end of it. So if we do get that call to make some dosages on a larger scale, we'd be prepared to do it, be that master files or like I mentioned before, the cleaning process. That would be a big advantage from our part.
From the pharmacy side, I can agree with the assessment there. We want to do things the right way and make sure that the sponsor is meeting the milestones, but done in a way that to ensure that the safety of subjects is not compromised. So speed is something that at Altasciences we pride ourselves on, but it's also the quality of work we do. So the earlier we get engaged, the better. And that's the nice thing working with closely within our group is I can call Dennis or Ben and we can get things going with solutions and finding a way to expedite the process and the procedure needed within the protocol.
Great. Can you source comparator drugs?
I'll take this one. Yes, we can, and it's actually a service that we provide regularly and often for our clients. We source reference drugs normally from our approved local licensed pharmacies. In some cases, reference drugs are not always available to our regular vendors, so we can also go into discussions with local manufacturers to source the drug. I have in mind a recent DDI study that was only sold in Canada through specialty pharmacy services. So we, with the sponsor and the manufacturer, had communications, and they permitted us to purchase that drug, and the study was a go.
What are your capabilities on blinding for study drug or reference IP?
So depending on the protocol, different blinding solutions can be provided. A bit like in my first case example, we can use like a matching placebo. We also have over-encapsulation that can be done for double-blind studies that we usually use when the IPs, like for oral doses, really don't look the same at all, or when there's dose escalating that require multiple tablets and we don't want that to be evident. Also the example of amber dosing syringes that we sometimes use for liquid doses. And sometimes for completely different IP administration routes, a double dummy method can also be used.
Can your sites perform over-encapsulation?
So like I just mentioned, it is something that we do for blinding studies. We have a specific SOP that covers like really most of our over-encapsulation needs for almost all of the studies that we use this. Sometimes a pharmacy manual is also needed to address certain protocol-specific needs. Like one that we did where the IP was a powder and it was the quantity was really dose adjusted. So we had to weigh each capsule with the powder and individualize each dose. So yes, we can do all sorts of over-encapsulation protocols.
A question here about scheduled products. Can we handle Schedule 1 products as well as cannabis?
Both sites, the Montreal and Kansas site, are able to handle Schedule 1 products as well as cannabis. I believe your Montreal site currently is working on cannabis products in different formulations. So we can handle both of these products that come to us in a clinical trial.
Yeah, you're right. We regularly do cannabis studies, or either vaping or oral oils and all different types. So yeah, we do that often enough up here.
Do we have ways to develop and manipulate abuse deterrent products?
Todd, I think you've had experience with that, with a study that happened a bit before I joined the Altasciences team.
Yes, Kevin. So this is a great question. It really hits to where we feel like we specialize in this type of clinical trial where we have to manipulate products for human abuse liability studies. So if a sponsor doesn't have a validated method to manipulate their product, we work closely with the vendor to ensure that method meets the specs set forth in the FDA guidance on abuse deterrent formulations of the solid oral dosage forms, specifically we're talking about opioids here. So we have worked in the past with sponsors who have a validated method. Either way, we just want to be sure that those samples before starting the protocol clinical trial are met. So there are many times where we have to send in samples to the sponsor to have assayed and make sure that they meet the specs set forth in that guidance by the FDA. So this hits us right where we're at as far as a site, clinical pharmacology unit. This is something we specialize in and we feel very comfortable with.
How do you anticipate and handle products to eliminate cross-contamination?
Cross-contamination is something we don't want. So it's part of it's a vital step used in our line clearance for each dose that's prepared at our clinical pharmacology units, both here in Kansas and in Montreal. So it's a key step that we prevent in our line clearance, and we make sure that that's part of our each batch that's prepared. We make sure that it's there and it's performed. And I think I'll go ahead and let Dennis and Ben speak of that, as well as I think they have something else to add on the previous question.
Yeah, we do similar, like we had mentioned up there in the earlier question, when we're trying to develop the multiple formulations, having a cleaning method in place here is critical, and that's the key way of preventing contamination, both well, primarily when you're finished with the product, moving on to the next product. All the products are made in a GMP manufacturing suite with the right airflows to create an environment that doesn't allow the API to escape into adjoining rooms. And Ben, we've done that for everything. That's a key piece to being in the GMP area, having a cleaning method, and it goes down to quite low limits for the absence of testing that we do.
Yeah, certainly. It's definitely something our clients are looking for, and it's something that we need for the GMPs. So it is a nice thing to be able to offer across all sites here at Alta. And even with the encapsulation, and that's with the Schedule 1 with cannabis, we can handle everything with that here also at Philadelphia. Schedules 1 through 5 in analytical and manufacturing, and over encapsulation if the quantities get higher then.
Right, and that's been a key piece with the cannabis being something relatively new coming into our facility. It's something that you have to keep control over, both from a DEA standpoint and from the contamination that we're talking about here. So
certainly, we have a few clients in that space currently.
Yeah, and the one thing that a lot of clients look for is the assurance that when they come in, the facility is clean, so they don't find it unusual that we'd have to clean after their product's made going forward. So,
do you go beyond early development or commercialization?
Yeah, great question, and we definitely do. We like getting involved early on with our clients, if at all possible. But we've taken on clients, that are already at the commercial stage, and they're looking for either a secondary manufacturer or potentially becoming a lead manufacturer. So we handle all stages of development, formulation, all stages of clinical, and then we have the right equipment in to then go into commercialization for our clients.
And a kind of general comment here or question: how do you streamline the process in early development?
Again, a very good question. I mean, as we're working with some of these startup companies, the last thing that they're thinking of is commercialization. So on the front end of it, when we're laying out the program, it's critical to get into the phase 1 and have successful formulations that are flexible. So I guess the biggest thing to keep in mind would be building in flexibility to the program and allowing you to change dosages like we were talking about earlier. Also, the size of the studies, anticipating that, being able to make larger batches as the program goes into late phase 1 and phase 2.
Okay, well, thank you again for attending today's event and for submitting so many great questions. And thanks again to all of our speakers. You guys really did a great presentation. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
As a reminder, this webinar will be available within 24 hours by clicking on the same audience link that was sent to you earlier. Thanks again for joining, and we look forward to speaking with you at future events.